hello there. This is a big ugly wall, and I want to make it look better by like displaying some cool stuff on it. So I want to build a really cool looking like artsy fartsy like shelf or something. Now, there's a few problems with this because this shed is built differently. Rather than having the supports running up and down, there's only two supports, one about here and one about here where all these electrical outlets are. So if I were to try to mount a shelf directly to one of these sideways 2x4s, it wouldn't be very structurally sound and it wouldn't look very good, and it would run into the problem of having these electrical outlets in the way. Not to mention having one shelf down here and one shelf up here would just aesthetically not look very good to me. I want to have three shelves, one above the other. And here's how I plan to do that. Basically, I want to make a huge triangle with one big board attached to the main support up here and the other two boards angling down between these electrical sockets and connecting to this support down here. Once I have that triangle in place, not only can I have a shelf at the top and a shelf at the bottom, but I can also have a shelf in the middle. So that's a very basic way to be able to get three shelves in an area where I otherwise wouldn't be able to. And given that this display shelf is going to be in the background of most of my videos, I want to give it a little bit of an edge. So I'm going to be embedding these RGB lights into the back of the shelf so that it provides some cool little bounce lighting and sets the mood back here. And I don't know, sounds like a cool idea to me. I'm gonna see if it works out. So this is definitely less of a tutorial video and more of a, I wonder if I can do this type of video. But if that's what you like, then follow along and enjoy the video. I mean, if you can. Obviously my shop is completely torn apart right now, so all the lighting in this video is absolutely terrible, and the audio is probably, well, I'll just do voiceover. So on to the video. Starting with this 12-foot long piece of 2x6, I marked out 3 4-foot pieces to form the main triangle frame. Now, in order to cut the corners so that they would match together like a triangle, I needed to cut them at a 60-degree angle. And if you're working with a normal miter saw, it only cuts up to 45-degree angle. So I had to build my own little rig. By simply cutting 2 pieces of 2x4, both at a 45-degree angle, and attaching them to the miter like this, then all you have to do is set the saw to whatever amount of degrees over 45 the angle that you need to cut is. Basically, since I'm needing to cut a 60-degree angle, I set the saw at 15 degrees because that's 15 more than 45. Now, depending on how wide of a piece of wood you're having to cut, as you'll see, you have to actually finish the cut with a different saw. So, if at all possible, you definitely want to use a table saw instead with a simple little miter jig. You can make this cut in one go, and it's a lot better. But hey, this is DIY. If all you have to work with is a miter saw, then the previous example works perfectly fine. So now that I had all the boards for the main triangle frame cut out, I set the table saw to cut at a 30-degree angle, and then cut all the inside edges of these boards to create a little recess to install the LED strip on later. I also made a similar cut on 2 of the corner edges to create a little channel for the cord that powers the LED lights to be able to run cleanly out the bottom. Now, if I'm being honest, joining these corners together was definitely the hardest part of this project. Given that you're working with all these angles, clamping anything together is nearly impossible. I'm sure that I could have built a jig or something like that, but I didn't have that type of time, so I ended up mainly just holding everything together by hand to try to make sure that nothing was slipping, and in the end it actually ended up working out pretty okay. But if you have time, definitely build a little jig to make these corners that much cleaner. Now moving on to the shelves themselves, oh god, that's hard to say. Basically, I just got a 4-foot long 2x12, a 4-foot long 2x10, and a little spare piece of 2x6 that I had laying around. And this part was relatively simple, given that all I had to do was decide where I wanted the shelves to be on the triangle, and that determined how long each shelf needed to be. And just for good measure, I made those cuts at a 30-degree angle to match the edges of the triangle so that everything would look nice and smooth. Now, to give these shelves some structural support, I used the triangle pieces from cutting the 60-degree angles earlier For the big shelf and for the medium and small shelf, I cut pieces of 1x4 and 1x2 respectively. I also made sure that all the top edges were cut at a 30-degree angle so that whenever they were in place, they would be in line with both sides of the triangle. And now, with all the pieces cut, I could set about the long, arduous task of sanding them all down, because goodness, there were a lot of different splinters on these pieces. I started with some 80 grit and then worked my way up to 120 grit, and if you want them to be a lot more smoother, if you're putting like a smooth lacquer on it or something like that, you definitely want to go for a higher grit. But again, the time constraints I was working with, all I did was a 80 rough cut and then a little bit of a 120 to kind of polish it off. Once that was done, I moved right along to the wood stain, and this is definitely something I would have done differently in retrospect. I used this golden pecan color because I wanted to have some light, natural looking wood against the dark blue background, but it ended up being too light to the point where it didn't even look like the wood was treated at all. I prefer to go with a little bit more of a dark burnt tone to this. So, I mean, this is a preferential thing. Do whatever you would like to make it look however you'd like. Just remember that stain tends to sink into the wood and dry a little lighter than it looks at first. So just keep that in mind. But with all the pieces stained up and looking as good as they were going to, it was time to start assembling everything. And this part of the process also turned out to be a huge pain in the butt. So I ended up using these big wood clamps to hold the shelves in place just long enough for me to be able to get a few screws in them, and then I can mount them properly. And once all the shelves were in place, I actually used wood glue to hold the shelf supports in place. And once the wood glue had dried, I could come back through and add some screws to hold everything in place more permanently. And then, last but certainly not least, it was time to install the LEDs. And by install, I mean take them out of the package, take the little peel off the back, and just stick them to the inside groove. It was really simple. And there you have it. This thing somehow managed to turn out simultaneously better and worse than I was expecting. I was kind of hoping that it would look a little bit more sleek and professional, but at the same time, given its somewhat rough around the edges look, it is obviously DIY, and that's what my channel is all about, so I'm not that mad at it. The lighting effects turned out great. I have this little thingy right here, so I can change to whatever color I want. I can make it do the flashy flashies, and I can even control it through my phone if I want to, just for more like usability options. So with this little shelf taken care of, I can finally finish up remodeling my shop into a legit studio. I'm really excited for that whole process. I can't wait to get the remodel finished, because I have been investing in all this new camera equipment to bring a whole new level of quality to my videos, as well as just different angles and like macro shots. That's what this thing is right here. This is like for taking macro photos and videos. So I am really excited at the possibilities unfolding in front of me with the new studio and the new equipment to bring everything to a whole new level. So if y'all want to see that as much as I do, subscribe. You know, if you like this video, hit the like button, and other than that, I think that's about it for this one. Have a good day, and yeah, have a wonderful day, and stay happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. I guess I'll make that a catchphrase. I don't know. I still don't have a catchphrase. Bye now.